Kuzampo, you are watching Bhutan This Week, our weekly news magazine program with me, Pupkam. Our top stories this week. His Majesty the King arrives in Phinsuling from Samtsi. 2 biographies launched to celebrate 25 years since His Holiness became the 78th G Khenpo. And Thimphu and Galifu chose new candidates for the post of Tompe. His Majesty the King arrived in Phinsuling from Samtsi yesterday. His Majesty is on a royal tour of the south following lockdowns in southern districts, which continues to be in place in Phinsuling.
After arriving in Samtsi from Gilifu on Friday, His Majesty met with the COVID-19 task force in Samtsi and also visited Tendu and Tashichiling to meet Desup's training in the 45th Batch Accelerated Program. His Majesty visited the border outpost and various points of entries in Samtsi, which are patrolled by teams from the armed forces and various government agencies along with Desups. His Majesty also granted audiences to the students and teachers of Norbugang Central School and Gomtu Higher Secondary School while in Samtsi. During these audiences, His Majesty the King said that the country is in the middle of 2 great battles to get through this pandemic and secure the future. His Majesty said we have to make sure to win both. His Majesty thanked the teachers for the additional responsibilities they have shouldered to ensure the well-being of their students and the community during the pandemic. His Majesty also met with the faculty of the Samtsi College of Education and discussed concerns and the royal vision for education reform. While in Gilifu, His Majesty granted audiences to Desups of the 45th Batch training at Jimiling and Pelrithang. His Majesty thanked the Desups for choosing to volunteer at a time when the country needs them. His Majesty also visited the Desung National Service Water Project site in Tarethang. The project, in partnership with the Ministry of Agriculture, started last month and will build water supply infrastructure for the benefit of the people of the Gyok. On Jabdung Kuche, His Majesty offered prayers at the Talidasa. His Majesty arrived in Gilifu after visiting Sambuzonkar on Wednesday. His Majesty is accompanied by His Royal Highness Prince Jigelugan Wangchuk and the Health Minister. Tandon Phinso, BBS News.
His Holiness Tiku Jimmy Chuda became the 78th G Khenpo 25 years ago. The silver jubilee of His Holiness's appointment was celebrated at the Namdruling Gunzin Tasa in Lhunse. His Holiness also launched 2 biographies published by the Juntasa and the Namdruling Gunzin Tasa. The Gesetiku Jigmiten Zlongpo also attended the event.
His Holiness graced the Silver Jubilee celebration with offering of butter lamps and prayers. His Holiness also launched 2 books to mark the day. One of the books, titled 25 Years on the Vajra Throne, highlights some of the major initiatives taken by His Holiness during his 25 years of service. The second book, titled Drugiten Paizegin, highlights His Holiness the J Khenpo's personal details such as his birthplace, early life and education, and also some of His Holiness's activities. To celebrate the day, a group of people from Ha and Paro also offered statues and other religious items to His Holiness.
Tarina Chabji Jiken Rinpoche that Kundilu that Chitogulu, the Longo Kichinga, Jubigi, the Tutensunalu, the Nachira, Tambodugia Habda, the Labortu Poropaco, Sutubigi, Missigi, Dinsabe, the Nachisange, Melasopagi, the Tumidisuna, the Kitishuni, and Levechao in Sessionilla.
His Holiness the J. Kempo was born on 22nd August 1955 in Lhunsi. He was born to Yap Rinzendoji and Yum Kinzangchude. Meanwhile, the 3-day Melam Chemo, presided over by His Holiness the J. Kempo to help contain the pandemic, also concluded today. For Sonam Siri in Lhunsi, Yishigalson, BBS News.
As the 70th J. Kempo and the country's jewel of refuge, the past 25 years of His Holiness have been defined not just with the strengthening and consolidating the Buddha Dharma. They have been equally about reforms in the clergy, of which people from all walks of life have been the direct beneficiaries.
One of the earliest reforms of His Holiness as the 70th J. Kempo is the initiation of Melam Chenmo more than 2 decades ago. The practice of offering mega devotional prayers was to promote world peace and uphold the dual system of governance in the country so that the citizens can continue to enjoy unprecedented peace and happiness. Ultimately, it was to liberate all sentient beings. His Holiness also provided the seed fund for conducting the ceremony. In July 2000, understanding the financial burden on the poor, His Holiness limited offerings, including cash, to the clergy during cremation ceremonies. His Holiness also established Theda Tsokpas and provided instructions and donations to set up the same. The Jungdasa, under the guidance of His Holiness, established a Mitu Plaga at the crematorium in Thimphu. This reduced the burden on the bereaved families of not finding monks and a place to complete the funeral rites. Besides, His Holiness contributed significantly to ensuring better health services in the country through regular donations of health equipment and other supports to the Health Ministry. The influence of His Holiness in the preservation of art and culture is eminent through the poems, songs and music His Holiness composed. In recognition of his lifetime service to the nation, His Majesty the King conferred the highest civilian decoration in the country, the Order of the Druk Gyalpo, to His Holiness the J. Kempo on behalf of the people of Bhutan in 2018. Sonam Mongdi for BBS News.
Former Home Minister Limpo Dagusring was conferred the Order of the Rising Sun Gold and Silver Star by the Japanese government. Limpo is among this year's foreign recipients and was recognized for his years of contribution in strengthening the friendship between Japan and Bhutan. This is the first ever conferral of the decoration by the Japanese government upon a Bhutanese national. Limpo served as the Commissioner of Cultural Affairs and then the Home Minister before serving as the Ambassador of Bhutan to Japan from 1999 to 2008. From this academic session, students of classes 11 and 12 will study business and entrepreneurships instead of commerce subject. This, according to the Education Ministry, is to provide a more relevant and applicable subject to meet the demands of changing times.
The new subject will help students develop business models and plans and encourage creativity and innovation from an early stage of education. Students will be taught to pitch business ideas to investors and enhance their financial literacy.
Through this subject, enough skills and competencies will be developed. If ever students do not want to continue their studies, they can directly use these skills and competencies to establish a business undertaking. So thereby, this will help them to earn their livelihood. While those who want to continue, it will have a very smooth transition to the RUB colleges, like especially Gedu College of Business Studies.
He said the subject will involve more of practical lessons.
But however, in this new curriculum, we have included project-based learning, whereby the 50% of the assessment will be done on the basis of project, to develop holistic skills about the development of skills and competencies in the subject.
Teachers from 75 different schools in the country have already been familiarized with the new curriculum and trained to teach the subject.
Unlike commerce, which hardly gives opportunities for the students to learn skills and put in all those skills in their real life, this new one, the business and entrepreneurship, it gives a platform to the students to come up with their own ideas, to come up with their own talents, creativity, innovations. And then whatever they learn in the school, they can really put into practice now. And now, not only that, now this curriculum is totally student-centered. Students are given more opportunity.
The subject committee, comprising experts representing the Royal University of Bhutan, Education Ministry and other relevant agents reviewing the curriculum contents, approved the new curriculum. The reforms to implement the business and entrepreneurship subject were initiated following its recommendation at the National Curriculum Conference in 2016. Kelsang Chodan for BBS News.
The earthquake on Wednesday damaged hundreds of houses, schools, temples and other structures in about 8 districts, mostly in the east. 2 people also suffered minor injuries in Sakteng Gewok in Tashigang.
More than 150 houses were reportedly damaged in Pema Castle. Dechenling is the worst affected Gewok, with some 40 houses developing cracks. 3 chetes suffered major damage. The Tsebar Lower Secondary School and BHU are also affected. 119 houses, including 20 schools, were partially damaged in Tashiangse today. About 60 houses were damaged in Tashigang, but the number might increase, with officials still compiling the report. In Samdrup more than 50 houses suffered cracks. Lanchifu Gewok is the worst hit with 15 houses. Minor damages are also reported in Sarpang. Nearly 80 households in 15 Gewoks in Mongo were damaged by the earthquake. The highest number of houses was damaged in Balam and Kenkar Gewoks. The earthquake also affected 6 schools in Drimiti, Depong, Kenkar and Samang Gewoks. 2 basic health units also sustained minor damages in Narang and Ngasang Gewoks. 2 temples in Samang Gewok are said to be badly damaged by the tremor. In Hlinsi, the tremor affected 10 houses in Kurte, Gangzur, Khoma, Minbi and Minje Gewoks. Hlinsi Zong also sustained major damages due to the tremor. It also badly affected 2 temples in Kurte Gewok and also partially damaged 3 other temples in Gangzur and Minbi Gewoks. In Bumtha, about 30 houses sustained minor cracks, out of which 14 are in Tang Gewok. 2 schools also suffered minor cracks, including a few other government offices and temples. The earthquake also caused cracks on the walls of Samcholing Zong in Tongsa. Relics and students were moved to a safer place. Wangdifoda also reported damages. More than 35 houses, including 2 temples, suffered minor cracks in 6 Gewoks. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the 6.0 magnitude earthquake struck Assam this morning. The epicenter was near a town 140 kilometers north of Guwahati. The tremors were felt across Bhutan at around 8:20 a.m. Sunampem for BBS News.
Galifu chose Sring Norbu this time. The Tompe-elect received 713 votes, while the former Tompe could manage just 375 votes.
Naragi only the Gade Dada, Missy Tindri Tolebe, Gelifulo, Yargi Gonfilgi, Chala, Chashi Gonfil, Kachira Berote, the Naragi only Cha, Matutubera, Tadamsi, Legion de Gishim, the Chashuni Dare, Kilandamchi, Seshunina, Lidachika, the Remachi, Gelifugi, Missir, Yongi, Tengalu, Jabjur Matutubera, Zena Midelu, the Naragi Honga, Simki Hilera, Katikasui.
Former Tompe Uttar Kumar Rai is the Tompe-elect of Phintsaling Tomde. He secured 336 votes, defeating 3 other candidates. BBS caught up with him after the results were declared.
chokti nibai me indira bedi basachuru ngachige lada ginku bagob lasheru ila ani disudi thoti dira ngachige ti masowa miselu ka ara chajuni shishuni bi di chamchi meba doro ngach insulin thomduna la bagob lasheru ila ani bodolu chi gongpel gi la del misigi kidu da de misigi rewa disu du lashe ani disudi ngachige chicho kansu gi thole ngara gi dichi sapimi chokwa disu chiga ka ara de tindi bulu chijim nale ngachige na gopen ngachige na insulin gi lungso gopen da del insulin thomdi gi gopen disu chiga ka ara chiga ngachi tindi gi thole dichi doro ngachige hemagi yamyonda thidigi be ladi namiseme de lejume benigi rewa namiseme ke do shingela.
And Thimphu Thomde also goes for a change. Ugendoji, the former Deputy Chief Urban Planner with the Thomde, is the Thompe elect. Securing 1,776 votes, he beat the former Thompekule Doji, who served for 2 consecutive terms. And this is what Ugen has to say.
Tari mise yonge ngaralu lotek digibe te tatsutup nami dilu ngarigi katule hindami kilera nami sami kadigaso yoyose shunila. Di nando nile ngarada chikabe doden bemi ngarigi nyamro te charo ni yoyose shuni konge miselu damkhatumi di te nami sami ngari katule konile te kachide yisheda tashide lese shunila. Te tari ngara te ta semga te di nando nile nalefata te toro teta 라디스에 때 남이 삼이 짭 갱 베고비기 teta 갱 쿠치 ngaral bombe 포치 teta 차자제 bombe 라인세 때 미세 용기 nga라루 때 로티니 디기 nga라 같이 데셈가 이세 슈니라 그렇지.
Almost 60% of the total registered voters turned up to cast their votes during the recent Thomde elections for Gelifu, Phintsiling and Thimphu. This is an increase by more than 20% as compared to 2016. The Election Commission says the elections were held with proper COVID protocols in place.
3 Thompens and 17 Sokpas have been elected from the 3 Thomdes. From over 10,500 total registered voters in the 3 Thomdes, more than 6,200 exercised their voting rights. A total of 35 Thompen and Thomde Sokpa candidates contested for the election. The Thompen elect of Gelefu Thomde is 38-year-old Sringnobu. He defeated his lone opponent, the former Gelefu Thompen, Tikaram Kafle. Meanwhile, the former Thompen of Phintsiling, Thomde, was re-elected for the second term. He defeated 3 other candidates. In Thimphu, Ugendoji won by a close margin, defeating former Thompen Kiledoji and Sonomdoji. 5 Thomde Sokpas were also elected in Gelefu and 6 each in Phintsiling and Thimphu Thomdes. ECB's press release also states that the post of the Thomde Sokpa for Motithang Demkhong under Thimphu Thomde and Trashiling Demkhong under Gelefu Thomde will remain vacant. The aspiring candidates for these 2 Demkongs were disqualified by the Commission after they were found to be registered members of political parties. Meanwhile, the Thomde election for Samrup Jonkar will take place in September. Shoni Dhamma for BBS News.
The Supreme Court upheld the judgment passed by the larger bench of the High Court regarding the case involving the former head of Chancery of the Bhutanese embassy in Bangkok. Senda Thopke, the former head of Chancery, is convicted of embezzlement, official misconduct and deceptive practice. He was sentenced to more than 9 years in prison and was asked to restitute about 10.9 million yutam to the government within 6 months. He embezzled around 17 million yutam and restituted about 6.5 million yutam in 2018. The matter came into the limelight in 2011 when the government learned about huge outstanding bills with some hospitals in Bangkok despite funds being released. Over the last few years, drones or unmanned aerial vehicle has become one of the most prominent and widely used tools for many filmmakers, photographers and videographers. But in Bhutan, its operation without a permit is strictly prohibited under the laws of the Bhutan Civil Aviation Authority. And this has not been well received by the filmmakers, videographers and photographers.
Drones are aerial vehicles, usually small, the size of a laptop bag, generally used for photography, transportation and navigation. And in recent times, it has caught the attention of many people due to its ability to capture aerial images, portable nature and cheap cost.
if we use drone in creative industry, the weightage will definitely increase. I mean, the drone can do so much of what like 5 or 6 cameras can do. So drone will definitely add weightage. However, it's sad.
The ngachire do ge khap di chachi chimula kati taruda lada the kachi biro the lakha the kachi biro the lishum sa ebala so ngachi ani MTV the video du so the lula the ani don't pu bi zo the namse henki lishum thome bala the ani don't pu bi gan di gara the chap so bala gara hin sa lishum bi thome bala.
From a creative point of view, I feel drones are important part of the filmmaking process, be it documentary, be it travel videos and films as well.
They say technologies should be welcomed to promote creativity and diversity.
When the regulation is too strong, when filmmakers are not allowed to use drones, or when the regulation makes it almost impossible to get permits to use drones in Bhutan, so it stifles creativity, it stifles growth. Getting a permit for drone operation is extremely difficult in the first place. There are multiple agencies involved, so it complicates a lot of things. It makes things very difficult, and at the end, I think it really discourages, especially private individuals and firms like us.
Somehow I managed to use a drone in one of my travel vlogs while trekking. I was not very much aware of the rules that we can't fly in woods. So I managed to do few 10 seconds shot of drone, and unfortunately I got fined for using drone because that was against the rules and regulations of the country. It's so ironic, like we talk so much of embracing technology, but when it comes to using drone, when the rest of the world is using drone, when rest of the world is taking advantage of what drone has to offer, somehow we are being restricted to use drone.
The drone pu arizum mamzoi bala ngachini zodalu da fanya foila ngachigide the fanya ngachigi tap tap hil da tangshugo da ngachigi jungi amola anina beta chese ta anina beta michese kongi hinsan sa sumbe bewachi ngache tap dini bala da kongi da YouTube na thom chira de la call on be ngachigi fine mam tap chi bala da ani chil bewachin semya maga simi bala da lakhangi boloka ja dal ani machop the machubi sakha bewachin de fine tab ngachi khimindo bala i charchi chi di chammela da Jobara kondisigi license the approved baby bini said the anigi license authorized baby the ani please ya ani na tancho ani na tamachupsi kongi zoni gi chachi chi to dula o ani bini ngachi da to ani lugudi.
Besides, they say the regulation and the process to register for a permit is not clear. According to the Bhutan Civil Aviation Authority or BCAA's regulation, at the moment, private individuals are not allowed to operate drones in the Bhutanese airspace because the technology is new to many and is risky to allow such practices. So far, the BCAA penalized some 30 individuals for unauthorized use of drones in the country. The office is currently assessing all the issues and risks involved in allowing private individuals to operate drones. The BCAA also plans to amend the regulation for unmanned aircraft system operations soon. In the meantime, as per the BCAA, people continue to flout the rules despite repeated awareness through the mainstream and social media. This is Sringdandu, BBS News.
The transshipment of goods in the border towns ensured an uninterrupted supply of goods and services despite the closure of border gates amid the pandemic. But for some, all is not well. Some owners of hardware stores in Thimphu are not happy with the way their goods are handled in Phintsiling. They claim most of their goods are damaged.
These load of hardware items reached Thimphu yesterday. But the owner was not happy. Some goods are damaged. These LED panel light cannot be sold now. According to the importers, each of these cost about 4,500 Newton and almost half of these items are damaged. And this is not the first time.
Ngadarim bucheda tetele ngajara jong tetele ma Phintsiling task force ki khatule te japcho nada na shimba yu te ngachi namesame kati che si shunwe la tari zumchi bewa chin te ani chala di suhibe nyamgyoba chi ngai si shuni la te ta ngachi ki chala di male bakdi on ma hibe ngale te tenen chala di su transport na transship chako la pa gari joni me te ani on boda te tenen ta chala di su khongi te male transship chap dalu te ta ni me ba ka thobbe dam te cha tumbe chala bjabe an sumgi te kangel dari ten chamchi mes shuni la te ten da ten shimba yu si shuni te dari sab omdalu 양치 중개베라 진집이나 양치 코랑기 칼람 텐디기 베베나 양치 마기베라 쭈쭈비나 안에 같이 행성서지 세니디 같이 있어 주니라 다짜라 안숨이 맵다 몽달로 같이 하루 공범 쭈쭈고 잘라이메라 해마베 진디 같이 잘라 록 리턴 베도 중기 같이로 아니 사고 트럭 파킹 등 같이로 나니베 차주 줍지 쓰슈니라 이외에 데티나 미나로 둠다치로 사고디 톰데기 사고 비올레 텐디 티수가로 콘자기 제니스 숨레 텐디 마치기 말루고 코마토 없으 슈니라 아니 보달로 때타마로 나치베기 센디디 카치모서 진 짜우짜우라 때마 찰라나미수기 잘라수 때둠다치 담달로 콩기 레줌베 하마고 잘라가치나 마시 때 차툼베 미소에 둠다치 콩기 레줌베 단지 탑나 초바진 땡아치 카툴레 센딥세베 아니 스슈니라.
But the loaders in the Phuntsholing truck parking area have a different story to tell.
Jewadi ngachi ni jinda ngachi ni shara do seshunina ngachi nare jindagi number le jinda chiga lolapta jinda soso chitoinla tigi jinda coin se chala chani tumni ma pale mi se takki gulama masa ko kore mecha se koi sundi chala din nalaya timbu hip jogobe kilometer 170 hapchi jogobe la nalaya ani nokanalu thap lejum matamachin chala lamda chala thunjo phujo namisim kangel chin chimme se anlamdi ngachi chala lejum dam tai
truck parking na la gutsu ve daunil hapchi asela te kangil se me di hema sache thendemi dari gudang bai se junila te roya jinda digila me tenga china lochala ani bechatum bedanu te dida tindi bi khongi tiru gobe se oda tiru di achi membela mayu tonta dukchu reshi da dukjangap chu I se amchi phop me se home te oda yale dida tindi bi ani be chanu te pat ani bi me se mi chi pachira tapke matu ba denga china lo tiru therbari dem chi phowina se wi dokpa bombera chadula.
The loaders say the owners should contact them about their consignments. With the pandemic showing no sign of stopping, issues like this might continue for some time. Pema Saldun Singh, BBS News.
That's all we have for you for this week. Thank you for watching.